The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. Access Fort Wayne is a department of the Allen County Public Library. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250.
Hi, welcome to the Cashman Mind, Body, Spirit Show. I think you will find this session to be very helpful to your family. It's about preventing, stopping, and even reversing cancer. It touches every family. In some families, a lot more than others. And what we ourselves do has tremendous effect. For example, on a developing child, what the mother and father are eating, whether they're using alcohol, whether they're smoking, affects the infant. The genetic script is being written, frankly, even at conception. But when it's in the uterus, what the mother is eating, the sounds that we are creating around it, whether it is music or arguments or whatever. The genetic script, which determines the characteristics of the infant, really, that genetic script, if you were to stretch it out, that piece of paper would go from here to the moon. Yes. And only about, you won't believe this, come from a field called epigenetics, upon the genes. Only about 5% of the genetic script has been written by the time the infant is born. So what you were doing, feeding the infant, the noise around it, your movements, whether you exercised, what you feed the child after it's born, for example, and how it's born makes a difference too, because as the infant passes through the exit, its face is covered with the bacteria and viruses of the exit, and if they had a C-section instead, they will not have the bacteria that are needed to digest food properly after they're born. Yes. A C-section has tremendous effects on the infant. Isn't that interesting? But anyway, let's kind of review about the opportunity, but this is full of opportunity, how we can prevent cancers. You know, people would say, well, 50% of cancers by what we do, whether we exercise or whether we smoke, whether we take drugs, for example, they will affect the infant and us and our health. But I tell you, they test people incorrectly today. They check only the blood sugar instead of serum insulins. So when they say that maybe 30, 40, 50% of cancer can be prevented by proper lifestyle, they're wrong, because the people with diabetes and a lot of sugar in their cells, they have much higher rates of cancer, because cancer is a sugar feeder. Mm-hmm. Cancer loves sugar. Otto Warburg discovered that in 1920s and 30s in Germany. Yes, that far back it's called the Warburg effect. And interestingly enough, let me tell you something about that. The virus that we hear about a lot today, viruses are actually, I didn't know until I read it a few years ago. Most rarely do I speak to even a scientist or a doctor that knows that a virus is a non-living thing. It has an incomplete genetic structure. It lives on sugar and fatty acids. It has to enter an animal cell or a human cell to get food. It can metabolize. It has to get fatty acids so it can form a membrane around it and protect it and multiply, go to the mitochondria that are in every cell. I mean, it's very interesting. So what we're going to try to do today is teach you a little bit about the root cause of cancer, because if we can get at the root, the plant won't grow. The cancer will not grow. What they've been doing for 50 years, NIH, CDC, Food and Drug Administration, cancer associations, for 30, 50 years, they've been doing research aimed strictly at the genetic code. Well, what they have found out now is that our genes changed so much that many cancers have many different types of genes, and as they spread, for example, they'll change their genetic structure constantly. We're trying to give them one drug to kill the cancer. Find out of the 10,000 different genetic combinations that cause cancer, maybe we have found 5 cancers that you can treat with one drug, and even those don't work very long because the cancer keeps on changing, so we constantly have to produce another drug. The pharmaceutical industry has made a fortune from manufacturing these drugs. But we have solved very little. We have solved very little. This is a genetic problem, and the genetics respond to the root. What are we eating? Are we exercising? And this really goes back. Every cell, animal or human, has in it the oncogenes that could produce cancer. Every cell in our body, going back millions of years in history, every cell had that from the beginning. The one cell, when living things only had one cell, like a virus, for example, they had the genetic information to form cancer, but they had suppressor genes which kept it from expressing itself. So we devoted all this money into doing gene research when it was the cause of the problem, really. There are a few. They finally discovered one a few years ago that could take one drug, a type of leukemia, chronic leukemia, myelogenous leukemia. You take one drug and it solves the problem. But that is extremely rare. So the somatic mutation research, the gene research, and when we deciphered the gene structure of our DNA, for example, we've accomplished that research, and we thought that'll solve all cancer problems. Well, it didn't. It didn't. And so now we're realizing that, remember Otto Warburg in the 1920s, 30s, he described what we call the Warburg effect, that cancer cells need a lot of sugar. They need about up to 15 molecules of sugar to make one ATP. That's one energy molecule. Normally it's one on one in a healthy person or plant, okay? But with cancer cells requires a lot of sugar. So restricting sugar to a cancer patient, which would be the Keto way, you see that in some of the books I'll be holding up, Keto, where you're living off fat mainly, not totally, but mainly as an energy molecule. Ketones are very small molecules, smaller than sugar, but they have much more energy in them. They're made out of fat versus sugar has less energy, and you need a lot of sugary molecules to provide, because cancer is multiplying and growing, and it needs a lot of energy. So that was a fatal flaw on somatic research. It was backed by the government and industry, and they were so close-minded, they would not listen. That maybe was not the answer. They castigated those people that had other ideas. They didn't give them any research money, and it really was something. So mutations are common in cells, but that does not always lead to cancer. For example, there are a lot of mutations, pre-cancerous lesions in our colon, for example, but they're not easily expressed. You have to feed them the right stuff for them to start going. So what's the hallmark of cancer? What is a characteristic of cancer? It grows. We know that. If you feel a lymph node and it's cancerous, it gets bigger. It spreads too. It has a membrane around it, and it takes quite a bit for it to spread. Hits the bloodstream, and the cells get dispersed. And wherever bloodstream goes, it can go anywhere in the body. So cancer can go to any organ, to the skin, to the brain. The brain protects a little bit because we have the blood-brain barrier that restricts some of the spread, but not all of them. So cancer grows, it spreads, it's immortal. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Normal human cells have what's called the Hayflick limit. They multiply a certain number of times and they die out. That occurs all day long in our bodies. Our bodies every day makes billions of new cells, and billions die every day, and we breathe them out, or we urinate them out, or we lose them in the stool. That's a normal process in our body. And remember, I said they're immortal. Cancer cells, yeah. Our cells, non-cancer cells, are not immortal. They have what we call a Hayflick limit, where they certain number of multiplications, and they die. In diet, what we eat does not affect our genetic structure. Genes have on them chromosomes. That our genes are lined up in chromosomes, have on them what are called telomeres, little extensions. And the things that we do, what we drink, whether we're smoking, whether we exercise, the food we're eating, attaches themselves to these telomeres. And the telomeres have a certain amount of length to them, and they shorten in our lifetime. And if we have bad habits, and they get shorter and shorter and shorter, and then we die. So the activities we do hit our telomeres. There's a field called epigenetics. Read about it. I'll have another show about it. It's very interesting. That's been fairly recent. Dr. Hahn and Dr. Weinberg, not Otto Warburg, Weinberg, scientist, 2002, not been that long ago, 20 years ago, in the New England Journal of Medicine, finally admitted for the community, because over 1 million scientific papers had been published on genetic research. And they frankly admit it's been very disappointing. Of course, maybe they should have admitted it a long time ago, because a tremendous amount of money had been spent. Very little had been taught on preventing cancer. The FDA finally, NIH finally took another tact. We physicians in medical research always spoke about you got to have peer review of your articles. Well, that's a very complex field, so if you want to publish something, it might take years because other peers have to agree or disagree with you. And a lot of the time they agreed with you if you were friends, and if you had a different idea, they didn't agree with you. And even if the other idea was a good one, they didn't care because the research money was coming to them. That was going on. That caused many people to die. Yes. And remember what I said, the pharmaceutical industry, which finally started funding the research because the government stopped paying for a lot of it. It wasn't leading to anything. And so finally they woke up a little bit and they started looking at a different path. They hired physicists who knew nothing about medicine. They established 12 centers for research for cancer in the country. And these were physicists and chemists just to clear the field. Genetic research did not solve this problem. They were not seeing the forest for the trees. Good news. Finally, they were looking at the soil, and scientific research now is looking more at the soil. They're not totally changed, but partially changed. So what we did in all this research, we reduced it to the first and the finest point, but the answer was a bit further up and a lot easier. Remember, Einstein said, the simplest thing, and nothing simpler, usually is the answer to a complex problem. Einstein said that, and how right he was. Medical research was reducing the thought process. And and all we found through the tremendous money we spend and all this millions of scientific papers, as a result, we served gibberish, nothing, very little. But a game changer did occur, CML, which is a anaplastic lymphoma. They did find a drug, IMATINB. This drug, one drug, would save the lives of the people who had this leukemia, yeah. But that was very rare, and they found other drugs helped a little bit, maybe a total of 5 when we had many different types of cancer. Nixon declared war on cancer. You notice Biden recently did the same thing. And I think a lot of people celebrated. But I cried. Why did you cry, Rudy? Because what an opportunity, although I voted for him, what an opportunity to have declared war instead on diabetes. Because that's a cause of a lot of the cancer, because there's sugar metabolism involved. Cancer lives on sugar. Remember the Warburg effect? I think Biden had a fantastic opportunity. Why he didn't do that? Lack of knowledge. But maybe industry is at work again. Industry is what caused the other problem. Sugar industry paid a lot of money for the other type of, to lobby congressmen, tremendous amount of money. The corn industry, I think we gave like $20 billion to Congress did, that we would eat more corn and use more corn, find out corn is the source of fructose corn syrup, which is not metabolized in the blood but goes straight to the liver, makes fatty liver, and is what helps make us sick. It helps cause diabetes, for example. Fatty liver fatty pancreas. Pancreas doesn't work. Now you have diabetes. President Obama, who I also voted for, saw an opportunity here because some of the advancement of the science. He saw this CML, that one drug was working. The government gave him a lot of money, but again, it resulted in very little. He didn't mean any harm, but industry knew better. They could have used that money for preventative treatment, which is, what we're doing here today. And so what they also did, the Food and Drug Administration approved surrogate outcomes. In other words, they weren't handing out much money, approving out much money. It's like recently what happened. I remember Biogen, I think it was one of these companies, came up with a drug for Alzheimer's disease, which is a tremendous amount of that. It's mostly caused by diabetes, but no one brings it up. That they had come up with one drug, and 14 members of the FDA wouldn't approve it. Only one did. So they thought of a surrogate point to approve the money. The money's been approved. It's $20,000-$30,000 per treatment. Tremendous amount of money spent. So surrogate different ways of measuring success. You get much earlier approval. That's going on right now with viral research too. They constantly, we'll approve this one early. They make a lot of money, and maybe it has very little effect. Remember what I said, the virus is a non-living thing. Have you heard either political party or any of the government agencies speak about encouraging people to get rid of the diabetes, type 2 especially, which you could do in about 6 weeks? I teach it all the time. 6 weeks you could have no diabetes, yes. But I can refer you to many books. It's not just me. Do you see any of them saying that? You save many more lives than vaccination. I totally approve of vaccination. All of us should be vaccinated. I'm totally vaccinated. I've had all shots. They want to give another one, I give another one. I mean, it's obvious. You want to save your life, get vaccinated. But that's not the point. That the government is misleading us by not telling people, get rid of your diabetes by eating the right food, not just the drugs, the right food, and you might not die from the virus. Explain that to me. I don't understand it. So we have to watch out for surrogate ways for them to approve things that don't work for them to make a lot of money. I mean, some cancers are caused by viruses, and we're familiar with that. Some are by bacteria. And some of these drugs are extremely expensive. But again, we want to not necessarily treat the seed, but the soil it's growing in. We improve the soil, our body, and the virus or the bacteria or the cancer won't be able to grow there because there isn't enough nutrients for them to eat. I think you heard it enough times now. And I already spoke about epigenetics. An English surgeon named Paget, Stephen Paget, who lived 1855 1926, first one to compare cancer to a seed. Yeah, it's the seed. But we get the seeds in my hand, okay? But I want to know the soil, because if I don't provide a cell where it can grow in, no cancer. Mm-hmm. Interesting. And then the field of epigenetics came along. Remember, what we eat, things we do, doesn't change our gene structure, okay? But how are genes expressed? DNA, but what you can change is the telomere. The telomeres can do something called methylation, okay? And they can suppress the cancer genes. They can And if you don't methylate you're going to have increased growth of cancer. Okay, so diet and exercise can cause changes in your telomeres. Your telomeres, and cancer may grow. Remember, every cell since the beginning of time has the genetic code in it for cancer. That was there many years before we even had a single cell structure. But it's kept quiet by suppressor genes. And so the cancer that's in every cell, that potential, may grow or stay dormant. It depends on the soil that you are providing. Isn't that interesting? But that smells of opportunity. That smells of opportunity that we can prevent these things. So the NIH, the FDA, the CDC, all the king's men, then established 12, and the National Cancer Institute is the one that funded the 12 centers and to bring people with a different thought process. So take it away from gene research, they brought in physicists to see if we could find out the cancer code. So peer review process I told you about before, delayed progress. And for example, we knew about smoking causing lung cancer, but the industry kept on saying, and it was funded by the cigarette companies, that we didn't say. We knew it for 20, 30 years. We knew it in the 1920s about the effect of cigarettes and causing cancer. That law for no smoking on airplanes, believe me, I flew on them too. I flew in the back of them, but there was smoking up front. We were just breathing in the air, for Pete's sake. They knew that it wasn't a national law until 1988 that you couldn't smoke on an airplane. Apathetic. So did my cells breathe in some carcinogenic smoke? You bet it did. Let me tell you another interesting thing. And this one, I'm pretty certain you don't know. But you can read it in Gary Taub's book. He's a whole chapter on it. And I've known this for a long time, but I rarely speak to anybody that knows this. There is sugar in cigarettes, significant amount. Yeah. After they have the leaves, they soak them in molasses. Mm-hmm. Oh, why is that? Because you are more likely to smoke the cigarette because you have become addicted to sugar. It's not just the nicotine, it's also the sugar. Look it up, Gary Taub's book, a whole chapter. But I knew it before that because I researched the tobacco thing, and they knew that as far back as 1910, 1920. It's a very interesting story. I have one book at home. I think it's yellow in color. It's this thick, the story of cigarettes. Go to the library and get it. You don't have to read the whole thing. Gary Taub's book is a lot smaller and worth reading. So then the government in 1992 put out a food pyramid. And USDA did that too. And for example, to show you how they can mislead us, they told us not to eat avocados. They wanted us to eat a sugar diet. For 50 years, we were supposed to eat sugar. Sugar is a cancer feeder. Avocados are good fats. That's keto. You want to avoid diabetes and cancer, and you want to lose weight, eat the keto way. And I teach that. You can look it up on my other TV shows or books. Yeah, and if you do a little fasting, like 16-8, you don't eat for 16 hours and eat for 8, which I do every day. I did it. I didn't realize I was doing it. And I noticed I weigh 135 pounds. and all my blood tests are normal. I'm on no pills, and I'm 39 for the 46th time. I'm not bragging, but I want you to know these things indeed can be done. And and they told us to eat bread and pasta instead. In 1992, they had a food pyramid, and at the bottom is full of carbohydrates and sugars. It was totally wrong. Totally wrong. It was approved by Congress, incidentally. And and this is in many books, don't confuse cancer research with science. It's not scientific. Not scientific. It's changing a little bit. So it has been discovered there is some cancer oncogenes, that's the one that produce cancer, and suppressor genes that stop cancer in every living cell in our body. And it has been that way since the beginning of unicellular life. They have decoded the genetic script. They took it all the way back from cell number 1 to billions of cells you have in your body today. So every cell has a seed of cancer, but you don't want to feed them the seeds. You don't want to feed them. That's how you prevent it. So actually, this goes back millions of years, okay? And as you well know, and which I've experienced, because I've had animals, cats and dogs, and I still do, and I love them. My cat sleeps right here every day. When I come home tonight, I'll be greeted by my cat. And all animals get cancer. Dogs get cancer. Cats get cancer. Now, my cat, I doubt will ever get cancer. And I tell you why. I fed her the same food since the day she moved into my house. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a food a cat's supposed to get. They eat more proteins than carbohydrates, for example. Eat these pellets. She's so used to it, wouldn't eat anything else. I remember my German Shepherd, who I loved very much, couldn't climb the stairs anymore to my bedroom, and sure enough, he had cancer. So cancer is older than humanity. But you can fight cancer with proper nutrition, physical exercise, no smoking, no alcohol. I think marijuana actually helps cause cancer. Mm-hmm. That's been proven. And some of that is because, especially kids up to age 25 or so, and adults too, they get the munchies. Mm-hmm. It increases their appetite, and they get a pot belly, and what do you think? There it is, fat and sugar, which helps form cancer. They have increased rates of cancer. If you're overweight, you're more prone to 14 different kinds of cancer. Colon cancer especially, breast cancer especially. When I think about it, the organization in town, I don't mind saying it very badly, because I've been over there trying to get them to change things. They send all the money to Indianapolis. Maybe they keep it a little bit here, I don't know about, but for genetic research. But remember what I said. Genetic research, that's the BRCA gene, that's maybe 5% of breast cancer, probably even less than that. And I tell you why it's even less than that, because you can have the BRCA gene to increase rates of breast cancer, it's genetic structure, but it has to express itself. If you're eating the right food and exercising, for example, the odds of you getting breast cancer go down. You have a little bit increased rate. So I wish they would keep half the money in town here and teach the community proper nutrition and exercise. Maybe play a little music so the kid, when it's born, comes out dancing. The Mozart effect. Okay, I tap dance incidentally every day. And I should have brought my tap shoes, hold them up for you. It would cause you to laugh. Okay, so the overweight have increased rates of 14 different types of cancer. Their death rate from cancer has increased at least 50% and probably more. And some of that's related to estrogen, which is increased if you're overweight. It's in the fat. And because you have more of that in your body, you'll start menstruating much earlier. So your length of time you're exposed to estrogen, that increases ovarian and breast cancer and uterine cancer. Almost 75% of uterine cancer is due to being overweight. Okay? And like I said, if you want to lose weight quickly, once you've heard this, go the keto way. Eat mainly fats, good fats, 50, 60%. Look at my other websites. You see that on there, 20% protein, 15% vegetables and fruit on top, and you probably have no diabetes in 6 weeks. As the sugar level goes down, the insulin level goes down, fat cells open up, fat goes to the liver, forms ketones, the brain loves them, and you feel much better. You know, I read the other day, which I really loved because I've been drinking coffee in the mornings, probably as far as my memory goes back. It makes me feel good. I always thought it's coffee. I'm reading now is that coffee stimulates ketone production. Maybe that's why I feel good. Once I have a cup or two of coffee, okay? And you can drink coffee and tea, incidentally, even when in the fasting state, doesn't affect it, okay? Remember that 16-8, which I like, 16 hours of not eating. I don't get hungry in the mornings because steroids get secreted as you wake up. Glucagon, the opposite of insulin, gets secreted. Growth hormone gets secreted. Your blood sugar is brought up by these hormones. And I don't feel hungry. Today, I didn't eat any breakfast. I played pickleball, and I ate one big meal at lunch of good fats, some protein, and a little bit of fruit. And here I am. When I get home, I'll eat my second meal. That's 16-8. Okay, it's easy if you do 2 meals. That easy. And if you need a snack, take a piece of cocoa or something, or a few nuts, for example. So exercise decreases breast cancer by 23%. Okay, and just a walk will do it. If you just walk 30, 60 minutes a day, just a walk, no big exercise deal, cancer rates go down. And what about, remember I spoke about type of food? I already mentioned to you type of food that would be good. Good fats, 60%, somewhere in there, not every day. 20% protein, that's your new food pyramid now. Okay. Is milk a health food? No, it's not a health food. Read Whitewash by Joe Keon. Joe Keon, once you read that book, you will not be drinking cow's milk. Yeah. Surprised? When a calf is born, it gets immediately injected by a growth hormone to increase, so it'll grow to much larger size and will produce more milk. Mm-hmm. And then they put hormones and pesticides on there so it doesn't die from the environment around them. They put the cow in a cage and then they milk it and then you give it to your kid. Veterinarians know you give the milk of one species to another, they die every time. We humans just escape it a bit, but we do have problems from it. And to me, to give milk to your child, your breast milk is the best milk. You can do that for a couple of years. Most people do it not at all. Half don't do it at all. And most of 6 months. But that's omega-3 fats. Those are the good fats. So breastfeeding is great. But remember, your child, if you had a C-section, does not have the normal bacteria in their gut. And they're going to have increased rates of cancer and diseases because the body is reacting in a manner because you're not feeding these bacteria. There are trillions of them living in your gut. Yes, you have bacteria living within you, in your gut, trillions. Mm-hmm. And these guys determine your health. So what you feed them determines your health. So to know about your gut biome is very important. I do additional shows on that. Rudy Cashman, YouTube biome, and you'll learn about that. So I'm not in love with milk here. The casein, the protein in milk, has been shown to be carcinogenic. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and highly carcinogenic, so increased cancers in children can be due to the casein. Mm-hmm. The lactose in milk, the sugar in milk, that a good percentage of people do not have the lactase that metabolizes the lactose to get it out of your body. The liver doesn't have it. Asians don't have it at all. So Asians, they don't drink milk at all. Mm-hmm. Black people have maybe 75% have a little bit of lactase to destroy the lactose, but many do not. So they have many bowel diseases. Holes get punched in the gut, increased rates of cancer, for example. So milk is not a health food. Read about it. Don't just take my word. Read Joe Keon's book. And there's many other books. I was shocked when I read it because my mother, when I was a child, we had a deli in New York City. Every day it was probably a gallon of milk that I drank. I'm amazed at age 39 for the first time I'm alive, but I stopped decades ago drinking milk. Milk from plants is more healthy. So what could we do? I think for one thing, we could throw a tax onto the foods that are unhealthy, which is done in Mexico. We just added a sugar tax. I'd been to Chicago to talk to the health commissioner there, and I noticed the one next to the Chicago hospital or something, they had passed a sugar tax. I was reading the paper. I was just driving home. It was in the newspaper. The people voted to overturn it, took tax away. It was saving their lives. It wasn't properly explained to them properly. That population that did that has a very high rate of diabetes. Certain ethnic groups, racial groups, have much more diabetes, which has 50 diseases attached to it, partly because in slavery, they didn't feed them. So you got to eat something. So they ate the sugar cane, which they were processing sugar out of, but they were eating the stem because they couldn't sell that, so they gave them the stems. But the stems were full of fructose. So that changed so the genes have changed a little bit. Although I mentioned already, generally what you eat, it does not change the gene structure a great deal. But I think it must have, maybe just eating and drinking the wrong food. But this is opportunity. It's a chance. It is a tremendous chance to undo all this by eating different food. But you must gain some knowledge. Nutrition is huge in preventing cancer. But I said if we taxed bad food, churro, for example, there's definitely a relationship between taxation and consumption of food. You like the cigarette tax, they increase it 10%, and probably 7% less people smoke. They know that. It's not one-on-one, but there is a relationship that happened in Mexico. They taxed sugar and cigarettes, and both went down, although South America is inundated with type 2 diabetes and its diseases. Corn is supplemented by the government, which, of course, remember, is fructose corn syrup. So what's a good cancer prevention diet? And I already mentioned the good fats, okay, is really the best. Eat more fruits and vegetables, and that's what you hear a lot and see a lot. But when you read the old books, Eat to Live, Dr. Furman, my friend, but 80% fruits and vegetables, but that's a lot of sugar in there. So I'm kind of, that's good. Let it be part of your diet. People who eat that way. Eric Adams, who was the mayor of New York City, as a policeman in Brooklyn, now he's the mayor, had diabetes, and a black gentleman who I really like. He ate more vegetarian way, and you see that on his YouTube show, and his diabetes went away. But I was reading the paper the other day, a follow-up article, Wall Street Journal or New York Times, whatever. He only eats that way 50% of the time. So degrees can affect it, but he never mentioned a word in there about good fats, so I like to add to that. I like to bring him to town to maybe put him on the show, because when a political leader is leading the way how to get at the root, he's getting at the root. Not quite there, but he's getting at the root. You got to love the guy, okay? And if that's the only change that occurs, they eat 80% vegetables, you'll get healthier, no doubt about it. But it's a lot easier to eat the good fats, delicious foods, full of recipes. Look at my YouTube shows. You'll see me discuss the keto way of eating, 16 or books I've published. Rudy's War on Diabetes. It's all in there. And I have a book with me, incidentally, that's here, The Cancer Code, by Jason Fung, F-E-N-G. I tell you, he gets it. He has a lot of YouTube shows. He has ones on diabetes, how to get rid of diabetes naturally. Get his books, look at his YouTube shows. That is, I think he's the most in the internet, YouTube, books, more than anybody I know. Follow me, but especially Dr. Fung, F-U-N-G. If you can't afford the book, come to the library. So the mitochondria are little organelles that are in every cell in your body. The heart has many more because you need a lot of energy. That's where the energy is made. That's the energy factory, okay? They're the energy factories in our cells. They have their own DNA. They're that important. Yeah, DNA determines your characteristic. RNA actually expresses it. So the mitochondria use glucose and oxygen phosphorylation and make ATP. If they use the glucose and the oxy, it goes into the Krebs cycle, which is your energy cycle, makes 36 ATP versus no oxygen, and cancer cells use the Warburg effect. That produces only 2 ATP. That's why they need to use a lot more sugar for energy. There are many cells in our body, okay? And our government has spent tremendous amount of money doing genetic research. I mean, we're talking about billions. And what are hallmarks of cancer are also hallmarks of unicellularity. Remember I said the same laws of cancer that are multi-organs all the way back to one cell. The same laws are applied to the original one cell, the beginning before even the bacteria. Unicellular life. Same cancer laws are there. And so as cancer progresses, actually it becomes more primitive to escape detection, to escape destruction. It keeps on mutating throughout your body. If it spreads to different parts of the body, every tumor really has a different genetic structure. You see the trouble why one drug wouldn't do it. I think breast cancer, for example, they send all the money for research to Indianapolis. And what percent of the breast cancers will they solve? If they promoted the proper nutrition, we'd probably eliminate 80%. They would say 30, 50%. That nutrition affects 30% of the cancer. I say double that because we have not properly tested people for a diagnosis of diabetes, and that it would be serum insulins. That's in book, Joseph Kraft book, K-R-A-F-T. Excellent book, published 2006. He has it. He has it right in there. You can find him on YouTube, incidentally too, so as cancer progresses, it becomes more simple. So cancer cells move backwards in evolution as they multiply and as they spread. So they don't follow the rules like breast cancer grows like it has its own God. The cells are changing all the time. It incidentally, the mammary glands, the ducts have a lot of insulin receptors on there. So they're quite responsive to sugar metabolism going on in your body, giving you a clue. And remember I said colon cancer, breast cancer, it's greatly related to partly the age, the more common after age 45 or 50 or so, when the estrogen level, the hormones in your body change. So targeting multiple mutations is daunting. Breast cancer, you probably need 100 drugs. Mm-hmm. Remember I mentioned the one cancer, the bone marrow cancer, where it takes one drug. But those are extremely rare cancers. That doesn't affect the other cancers. Cancer is the ultimate survivor. It's not random. It's not stupid. It has developed tools to survive. You got to outsmart it. So every cell has a seed of cancer. Cancer is not rare. It's ubiquitous. And matter of fact, as people die of another cause, they have found that 36% of the patients who died, females, had breast cancer in them. Females too. Yes. They had the cancer in them already. But it's not manifested, not big enough to detect on an x-ray or that you could feel for it. Mm-hmm. Same with the prostate cancer. By the time males are 90 years old, 90% of them have prostate cancer. It just didn't manifest yet. That's the reason the way we screen for it and treat for it has changed. They won't pay for screening at a certain age anymore because these cells, they don't screen for prostate cancer, I think, after age 75, because a huge percentage of people would have it. That result in treatment, unnecessary cost, complications, they can be avoided. Isn't that interesting? What are the nutritional causes of cancer? Root causes. They say 30% of cancers are due to what you eat. I think it's twice that. Why? Because we have been diagnosing it wrong, running the wrong tests, not testing for these diseases. Tobacco is thought to cause 35%, and the rate of smoking has decreased. But now we have kids starting to smoke, and I found there is some sugar in these vaping that they've been doing to increase the addiction rate to nicotine. And yes, so these companies, you got to watch out. Don't let your kid vape. Occupation, toxins, chemicals you're exposed to. For example, will cause about 20% of cancer. Infection, another 10%. Bacteria, certain viruses, papillomavirus, and cervical cancer. A lot of these cancers can be due to viruses, and we have some prevention techniques, but not for all of them. But fat in your body becomes enemy number one. Okay, is what they say, but actually it's sugar. Sugar is the booger and the hooker. So what you're eating, find out if there's sugar in it. The Krebs cycle is the energy cycle that's been scientifically established. Krebs was a scientist in Germany, and a friend of Warburg, actually. and a lot of bright guys living in those days. And it produces energy. In the cycle, it releases ATP, which is the energy molecule. And if it's aerobically determined, it's a lot more ATP versus anaerobic, which is fermentation. Cancer uses fermentation. It produces very little energy. That's the reason it needs 13 molecules of sugar to make one ATP, the Warburg effect. They thought, and Warburg scientific information was known all over the world, but till they discovered the helix, which demonstrated our genetic structure, our RNA and DNA in the helix, and then they said, oh, that's the answer to cancer, but they found out it's not the genetics, it's not the answer. It's the telomeres, that the extensions of your genes, which you change by your habits or your nutrients. And so the whole thing begins, if you look at the cycle of the chemistry, it begins with pyruvate and breakdown of sugar glycolysis and fatty acids, and that goes into the Krebs cycle. In the end, when you go around the cycle, what comes out in the end? Ketones. Ketones. So to learn about ketone metabolism, I think it's great. You can get rid of diabetes 4 or 5 weeks. 90% of the time you'll be healthy. Cancer rates go down, but it's very interesting, and I studied that in great detail. But you don't need to know all that. If you just learn about the food pyramid, which I recommend, you can also find that in Susan Ryan's book, Simply Keto. She explains it very well. It's a picture of her on the cover, a beautiful girl. She lost 100 pounds. Most of us don't need to lose that much, but if you lose something, but that's a great book. So I encourage you also. This Station Fung, F-E-N-G, he has one on diabetes. If you read that book, you begin to realize that, and I have some others to show you, but here's one. I'd like you to see that in more detail. Joseph Fung, F-E-N-G. A lot of YouTube shows, always a new one, almost every week. Every week. I really encourage you to get interested in that. And here's by Margaret Okomo, The Making of a New Cure and the Real Promise of Prevention, A World Without Cancer. She writes this book. All similar science, but presented differently. Really, you can pick them up at the library or buy them, whatever you like. Keto for Cancer by Kaminin, also excellent book. And especially if you have it, don't give up, don't throw in the towel. We're talking about prevention most of the day, but actually if you have cancer in itself, don't feed it. Don't feed it. If you eat in the keto way, you're not feeding it. And you may very well stop it, occasionally cured, reverse it. I didn't say you'd be cured every time you do that, but you'd be trying to do something besides taking medication. Medication's fine. I didn't say do anything that your doctor recommends, don't stop it. But learn how to eat right, and I think that would be a good one. So gather some information. Don't throw in the towel. Don't give up. There's hope. And I'm today just trying to open the door on prevention, big time. Also, if you got it, to slow it down or maybe even reverse it. Why did I do this? Because the government, a lot of big government agencies, I'm afraid as doctors, haven't been the greatest at it. I'm trying to keep you alive, live to be 100, so you can play pickleball and tap dance with me. I do this because I love you and care about you. Namaste. Thank you for listening.